of all, I want to say thank you for coming to the AI Summit. We had one last year in DC at the International Spy Museum, but I would argue that this is I think, the most beautiful venue that we've ever held an event at. So shout out to the city of Chicago. I don't think there's a more appropriate place to talk about supply chain, but in the city of Chicago. And so excited to be here, excited to host you. If you guys need anything, please let us know. So I've got the honor to talk to Eric. Eric is the Chief Innovation Officer of Redwood. Redwood is a logistics company, managed trans, as well as is involved in technology. And we're going to hear all about that today. But I want to start. We've got this room. We've sold out of folks here. But the big question on everyone's mind is AI a bubble? What do you say, Eric?
No. It is not blockchain. It is not these other things. It creates real value. I think there's a lot of hype. I think the SaaS apocalypse is overblown. I think the job fear is it's just going to create new jobs. I'm very bullish on it. I think it is an opportunity to impact just how we think. And I'm kind of excited to talk about that because I think what's happening in a little bit now is like everything here, a lot of the vendors in the hallway, like these are all very real technologies and they all solve very real challenges. And I think it's moving so fast that it feels like a bubble. The whole thing could explode, right? The data center investments, all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, this is our new reality and we have to be prepared for it.
So there's been a lot of capital that's gone into AI, both public. I mean, you could argue SpaceX, a lot of what drove its valuation or TAM is AI. But there's also been a lot of capital invested in AI in logistics and supply chain. In fact, talking to some venture capital investors, told me if it wasn't AI, don't bring it. And that was sort of the general message along a lot of VCs. Where are we at in terms of the stage? You and I have lived in this business for many years. Digital brokerage was a hot trend in the 2015 to even up to, you could argue, we got to 2020 before the bubble burst. Do you think we're in 2015 very early, or do we think we're later in the cycle in terms of the investment cycle?
I think, if you just reference it as like one of those curves that like Gartner lays out there, right? Like the, slope of enlightenment, the peak of inflated expectations, the trough of disillusionment, and then you get to like this steady state where, it becomes just as normal as email. I think it's on the way up to peak of inflated expectations. And we're about, especially in supply chain, right? And then we're about to go into a trough of disillusionment, not of the technology itself, but what it takes, not just from a technology lens to get it valuable within your organization, but from a people and process lens, right? So there's a lot of AI demos better than anything I've ever seen in my entire life. Like you can put an AI demo together, you can vibe code something beautiful, you can make it enterprise, you can show it unbelievably well. And as everyone in this room knows, supply chain is all about exceptions, right? And everything going wrong all the time. It's why we're in business. If our customers could do it, they wouldn't need us, right? So I think it's at this phase where you can get a ton of value out of it. And now everyone has to figure out, how do I integrate it not only with my existing systems, but with my people and process and culture. And it's a different paradigm that we're entering.
So a lot of companies in logistics, a lot of investment has been poured into this agentic, or the idea to eliminate humans. As I think if you ask the average person that knows enough about AI to be dangerous, they would say that this is all a technology that's going to eliminate humans. What's your thought on that? And when you guys have implemented AI inside of Redwood, where are you seeing it actually have an impact in terms of human count versus creating new revenue streams that you didn't have before?
So we've only been hiring because of it. I think a lot of the layoffs that you've seen out there in the news, quite frankly, my totally biased thesis is people overhired in COVID, and there's a lot of bloat and waste, and organizations have done RIFs, but those RIFs are overstaffed for things that we just probably didn't need at the time. And AI is a great way for a balance sheet to say, hey, we're reducing folks and look at what we can do as an organization. But I don't think that's the end all be all, right? I think knowing where your folks add value within the organization is something that AI will actually make different, right? So if you think of AI and jobs, right, it's forget AI for a second, right? Like say that everything that leaders and organizations do creates a wake, right? And you create a wake of value, and behind you, more people in their departments create wakes, and it keeps going, right? And then you've got this, all of these waves moving in the water. AI just does more, right? I don't know about anyone else here, but since AI and ChatGPT came out, like I've been busier than ever, and we have more work to do than ever. And the work doesn't stop at 5 o'clock when you have an idea, but you don't have to depend on a team to go really, really far to think about something. And then you end up having this ability to come in the next day with what would have taken weeks or months. And now you have an idea that now, in addition to all the work you have to do, now you have to figure this out and prioritize it, right? So there's just a tremendous amount of, I think, additional work that's going to come. And certainly we can talk about it, right? There's going to be jobs that will get reduced and potentially eliminated, but we see new jobs and roles getting created all the time.
There's a Bloomberg opinion editor that actually talked about this very thing. And he was asked about the employment market, a low hire, low fire environment, what's really going on. A lot of companies are getting away, we could say, with these layoffs. And we've seen, in fact, if you look at the Wall Street, a number of companies, when they've announced, thousands of job losses, their stocks rally. And it's interesting because having covered business news for at least the last 10 years, anytime you say layoffs, it always implies that there's something wrong with the business. And usually it creates more questions. We're in an environment where laying off is being rewarded by Wall Street equity values. The Bloomberg economist, or the Bloomberg opinion writer, had a different take on it. And his view was that a lot of this is, to your point, there was a lot of hiring done during COVID. A lot of the salaries that were paid, because every business was bidding up and was offering compensation packages. And the challenge was that those jobs were inflated versus the value that they were bringing. His argument is that a lot of companies are using AI as a cover to really address business issues. It sounds like you would agree with that.
Totally agree. I mean, it's a very sexy way to say, look what we're able to do, reduce costs, increase efficiency, improve EBITDA, right? And at the end of the day, it's like we can have this AI just do everything. But it was in a lot of those layoffs happening earlier this year and late last year were like, even before some of the major advances in the frontier models, really made things even as fast as they are now. And we're seeing job growth, and so I'm aligned with that viewpoint completely. I mean, I could go on all day.
Yeah, he actually used the terms. He was using a reference, the spot and contract rate. He actually quoted that on the Bloomberg podcast, and he was like, "This is like," he used a reference that we use, which is contract rates versus spot, and the spot market in employment had collapsed. I mean, if you're trying to hire young people, I have a son who's now a sophomore in college, and we're talking about just the job market for young people is very difficult. And you can hire young people that are AI forward. One of the things I've noticed, both in my own business, but also talking to CEOs, is that they find kids that were using AI perhaps to cheat their way through college, actually bring a set of skills because they don't view it as you don't have to change behavior. You're not altering their behavior. They've naturally figured out how to make it part of their, to them, it's not, it's not cheating. It's not committing fraud, if you will. And it's not threatening to them. And I think there's a really interesting element. Where are you seeing in terms of the culture element? Because that's really the big question here. I think every CEO you talk to wants to do more with AI. They want to move faster. The problem is culturally, that's a big challenge. Where have you seen it effective?
It's a great question. I think the future of work changes and roles change, and back to cheating, right? Like, let's just call it what it is. Like these frontier models, it's one giant cheating machine, right? I mean, it's trained off of all of the knowledge out there. They're training on knowledge when you don't pay your enterprise plan. I mean, it's scraping the knowledge of the world, and then they're trying to protect all of that IP within their models, right? Of what they got out there. So that's a whole ironic thing within itself. Going to the spot and contract thing for a second, I think we're seeing that play out right now with token cost and token efficiencies, right? Like AI in the subsidized era was all a contract market, right? You pay your $20 or $200 a month, you get all of this compute, right? That is very quickly going away, if not almost gone, especially at enterprise level. And it is a spot market out there, right? And you are watching just this, insatiable demand, right, for this kind of stuff. And so, organizations are rethinking, hey, yeah, maybe, I can play the riff game back in the day and say that, we don't have the need for all these people. And now, token cost is exponentially growing up with all this, innovation and also sometimes waste, right, that organizations are doing. And so everyone's balancing that. And then to your point on employees and people and team, right, I think it's back to what I was saying earlier, like the future of work is about to change. And if you think about AI and like these cycles, right, I think it was like Moore's law is like something like compute power doubles every 18 months, right? With AI, that's even faster. It's like, 3 to 6 months increments, you see this massive, shift in capability. But people take longer to change, right? Like instituting change and change management within an organization is like a 3 to 5 year journey for people to wrap their heads around this. And so all these companies are trying to play catch up. So specifically to your question on, folks who figured out how to use this in college, like they're great and use them and figure out how to use them horizontally or set up pods to, pair, traditional employees with people who can look at what they do and automate it. And then it creates this sprawl effect. And now you have all of this innovation happening. And how do you make it stop going horizontally and get it vertical? And so these are the challenges we're all facing because the future of work is changing so quickly and it's happening way faster than our traditional pyramid org charts can keep up.
Yeah, I think it's interesting you say that. So I run a media business. A media business is probably every technology innovation that's happened has brutalized the media industry. Has been really difficult for media. And so media companies are naturally on sort of the losing edge of this innovation because information is becoming free. There's this conversation in media circles about just the shitification of the internet and the content, because if anybody can produce content and content goes to zero, then what's the value of producing it? But I noticed something, this was not too long ago, it was a couple of weeks ago. In our own business, we had a reporter on one of our titles, a B2B reporter, and he was complaining about this newsletter he has to assemble every morning. And he's like, why aren't you using AI to help you do this? And he's like, well, I used it. It didn't work very well. And we're like, when did you use it last? And he starts describing the problem. It was 3 years the last time he touched it. And he was like, it's not very good. And we were showing him what you could do with it and how good it's been. And large of these models aren't doing the kind of hallucinations they were 3 years ago. And it was very obvious talking to him. And like, we're a business that wants to embrace it, not to replace the humans, but to make their job easier. This is a guy who literally described that he hates his job because of this newsletter that takes him 4 hours every morning. And it's basically just creating a summary of an article that's already been written. So nothing really, but it's a pain in the ass. Yeah. And I found it really interesting because this is someone who's been writing for 30 years, didn't want to use the technology because they tried it. Yeah. Even when their job was miserable, he was absolutely miserable at his job. But it was this epiphany that I think what happens in these businesses with older folks that have been doing these jobs for many years is they've tried it once and they don't go back. And so now I have the question in my own business is, how do I drive that discovery process? Yeah. Like we have people, particularly younger people, that are just like all in on AI. They're familiar with it. Like I said, they cheated their way through school. Boom. It's when you get people who've been doing jobs for many years that I think are resistant to change. How are you seeing effectiveness in terms of adapting that?
I mean, substitute AI with any change, and that's the narrative, right? I mean, we've been doing this for 20 years, whether it's, delivering TMS or WMS or global trade solutions or automating, right? There's always folks within the organization that say, I've done it this way forever. It's fine. Change is scary. I'm worried about it. Everything's going to collapse. My judgment is what matters. And it does, right? And this is why change takes 3 to 5 years with organizations, because it's a political game and you're trying to get everyone to, not get everyone, but get most people to buy in and eventually create a groundswell and then institute change within your company, whether, like I said, it's a new TMS or using AI to write articles. It's a paradigm shift, and it's just something that has to happen somewhat organically, but it's happening faster and faster and faster. And then you're surrounded by it. And I'm sure you remember back in the day, because we're old enough, right? But a lot of people didn't want to use email, right? I will make every phone call and I will build that relationship, and the world just changes. And eventually, you adapt to it. But I think the whole thing is like, just technology is evolving so much faster than humans evolve, and our brains and our tribalism and everything that happens, right? Like we're used to being these small little groups, and now everything's accessible everywhere, and you can imagine anything and make it and create it. And like, we can't keep up with that intellectually, right, it takes a while, right? And I think the people in this room are on the forefront of trying to institute that kind of change and influence within their company and their customers. And we're sitting at this place where we're trying to explain not only why not to be scared of it, try something new and see that it works, and then think about, okay, then how do I change what work looks like?
I mean, it strikes me that Sam Altman is the face of AI. I personally, I consider him a horrible ambassador for the AI conversation. And I also find the whole idea that this is going to, you can go down to the YouTube dark world where you're watching videos of it ending civilization. It's 5% chance that we're all going to die in the next 3 years from AI, as well as all these jobs being eliminated. Cybersecurity is going away. The Anthropic has talked about that. I don't know that these AI companies are doing themselves a service. But as executives of businesses, we want to take advantage of the technology. Yeah. How do you think, where have you seen the most effective strategy of sort of explaining why this technology is an enablement versus it's going to end your life and end the world?
Yeah. So there's a lot of things that can end our lives and end the world, right? I mean, so let's push that off to the side. I think we have to think about, crawl, walk, run, and that's hard with AI. But, if you look at it in terms of ROI, right? And you're just like, all right, how do I institute change? I can do super neat technology stuff and create demos and show how we can do stuff. And it's wild. And there's a McKinsey study recently, something like 80% of organizations are using Gen AI, and more than 80% of them can't say what it means to the P&L. And so you think about that and you're like, okay, well, what's the reality? Well, in supply chain, we all know there's so much automation and exception management, right? And so much of it is already automated. So we're just going to automate the rest of it, right? And then the question is, what happens thereafter, right? So you've got your standard plan from quote to cash, and things go in and they get tendered, or you're looking for capacity or using AI to talk to carriers, right? A lot of stuff happening in vendors here that are doing, and organizations are doing organically, but what happens after that, right? And so you have to show the ROI of phase one and show that where, hey, we can make this $1 million investment, and over time, right, we've tracked what it costs to do what is today, call it RPA 2.0, right? Or automating the process of the exceptions. But then quickly thereafter, within a couple of years from now, right, that's going to be the norm. And, it's going to be ROI driven to get there at the beginning and figure out where do we need people and where exceptions still cost effective. And then from exception management and automation of workflow and process, right, then what, right? Then what do we become to our customers, and who are we using AI? And I think specifically to your question, start with ROI and what it means. And do you have something measurable that that this can make an impact to? Because you have to make an investment. But then from there, once you start getting this under your belt, to the person who, doesn't want to use AI to write an article, eventually they'll see it and they'll see it happen. And then,
by the way, that was an awe. He was in the office and we were talking, he was a remote employee. And in the afternoon, we were explaining to him that he could use it and set it up, and it all worked. He was still resistant, but he came back the next morning and goes, I had this epiphany. I was laying in bed and realized I was just fighting this because I had been doing this for so long. It was habitual. It was this idea that I didn't want to use it. Now he's using it and loves it and embraces it.
Well, I think that's the theme, right? Which is there's inherent skill, right, to do a thing, which, better or worse, people can write at all sorts of different levels. But the real thing that makes his writing or anyone's output or whatever you do is judgment, right? And this judgment layer, like, I'm sure everyone's used AI enough to see that, like, there's a difference between it doing things that it can predict with tokens and having skills based off what it's seen in the past, and using judgment to do something new or creative or different, right? Like,
what is it good at? What is it bad at? Like, if you were to sort of put the spectrum of, we all know it's very promising. There have been things that I've experienced that it's exceptionally good at. And there's also things that I've experienced that it's actually really bad at.
Yeah.
What is your perspective as you sort of look at it?
It's so good at writing code, because code, you can test against it, right? It's harder to test against an idea or an article or a thesis or a thought, right? But code it's known, you can do it, it's predictable, right? You can test against it, and you can create use cases, but that's what it does. Like, the meaning of that is that folks can create ideas and hand it off to engineers or teams or customers in a way that before was months and months and months and months of ideation, right? And writing on paper, right? And now you can hand a working prototype to a team and back to, a product is worth, just so much more when people can touch it. Now you start getting that feedback and innovation starts happening faster. So I think if you don't expect it to give you your final output product and you expect it to help you get there so much faster, and then you just judgment on top of it to decide which level of its output you should use to be more valuable within your day-to-day life, it's the greatest game changer I've seen in my entire life.
I mean, I think where we've got the most value is data visualization. We've accumulated all this data. Will Hoffman is in the room somewhere. So we've got millions of data points, and how do you visualize the data is always the problem. Visual layers usually take 2 months to ship. You know this.
Yep.
It's always, my experience is with enterprise CTOs and CIOs. One of the TMSs the legacy TMS is really bad at visualization because it used to be very hard to do it. AI does an exceptionally good job of that. When Hormuz blew up the first time when we first went to war, fuel prices went crazy. We had all this fuel data, and it wasn't easy to get to. And I think Will had it up in an hour. Was able to take all this data we'd already accumulated and put it into a visual layer, like literally within an hour using Cloud. That was something it was good at. What I found it to be really bad at, Eric, is really time series data of making decisions off of data. That's where the hallucination comes because it draws a data point out of it. But if it's time series, it doesn't know. It's getting better at this. It's not perfect. It doesn't know whether that data point is today or 6 months ago. It might read something and say that 6 months ago. That's been one of the things that we've found to be more of the challenging.
Yeah, I mean, if you use, and if you just use general AI and you tell it to do something, and then all of a sudden you're like, hey, so what happened? You have to tell it that it needs to know it's a concept of today, right? And time is a weird thing for it because it's just predicting tokens, right? So it's not a traditional computer. And, if you keep going down that path of what it does and what it does well, it does a lot of things pretty good and a lot of things pretty poorly, but then you stitch them together.
But it thinks it's better than it is.
Yeah, but they're dumb minions. AI is like the movie Minions. They're all these little yellow things running around, and they have really great intentions, and they're all idiots, right? But you get a bunch of them together, and you put them in a harness, and you tell them what to do and how to hold each other accountable, and you give them structure and order, then things start to change, right? And you can get all of a sudden this immense value out of it because you're like, hey, minion number 1, go do this thing. Minion number 2, you watch him, and here's what quality looks like. And minion number 3, and then you're just battling cost and performance against output and trying to innovate.
One of the things I've seen is if you go and ask it to do this big task, let's say you're researching a project or designing a product, and if you try to jump into that all at once, it does a really bad job of that. Yeah. What I've actually found it to be really effective is you slowly train it. Go research. I want to develop a new feature in my software. Go research the best of the best. So I want to add scheduling to my TMS. Go research the best scheduling software. We're going to put Qt out of business, right? And so it will come back and say, these are the features. One of the other things it does really well is it reads customer reviews exceptionally well. You can find out a ton of intelligence on your competitors and yourself by asking it to go through and research all of the comment streams. We have some consumer products. I've seen it really good in consumers, probably better so than most. But it does a good job of that. But then you take that, you say, okay, now that I've got this playbook on what's good, what people like, what frustrates them, I then want to apply it into building this. But you almost have to do it in increments. Yeah. I think the mistake that I've seen is if you try to just shotgun it and say, I'm going to build I want you to build a scheduling app, but you don't give it any basis and you don't train the model itself, it's going to give you a piece.
It's just going to start predicting tokens, right? That's what it does. It's a math machine, right? But if you give it context and memory, right? So this is where we see the future of enterprise going, right? Which is organizations, back to my comment earlier on tribes, we're all tribes. Every company is a tribe, and some of us are 10 people, some of us are 10,000 people, right? And we have tribal knowledge inside, and all of that is accumulated over years, and it's just this big living organism that is business. And each one, right, has its own knowledge and judgment and salespeople, and you go out there and you encourage, but you have some sort of rules, whether they're written or unwritten. And whether you're prompting to create a doc scheduling application or you're, doing anything else, it's giving it guardrails on what you want it to do, to your point, right? Just like any human, be like, go build a doc scheduling application versus build a doc scheduling application that manages, 3D load config in addition and predicts time, and right, you can give it more and more stuff. So it's the same as like business and enterprise, right? Tell it about your business, and it starts over time. We start to think about it instead of a prompt, right, where you give it a prompt and it gives this output, but more of, hey, if I had AI model, open source from China or Claude or, it doesn't matter, but I gave it this harness to live in, and I gave it these rules and this knowledge and this memory of my business, whether it's by department or the whole thing or silos or very small stuff. Now, all of a sudden, you can ask it that same prompt of build me a doc scheduling application, and it has context of your whole organization and may do something like, hey, go use Qt. Why would you spend money on this, right? All the way to, here's how I would lay it out, right, in a way that, makes sense based on what our shared DNA is, our shared knowledge of the organization. And back to where AI is, that's at the infancy, right? Getting the tribal knowledge, and then everyone's like, oh, well, it's just going to learn to take my job. I think it's the opposite. It's going to learn to work with you, and the future of work is just going to change, and we're going to have other things to work on.
One of the things you said earlier on is that the SaaS apocalypse, and if for those who haven't followed Wall Street, this concept that Claude and AI is going to replace all the SaaS companies. So let's pick on Tom for a minute about scheduling.
It's a rough day.
So I told Tom he's got the most boring startup in America and freight because it's scheduling, right? It's a very basic task. On the surface, if you describe that business model to someone on the street, they would say, well, why can't you build that scheduling software with Claude?
Yeah.
You made the case that SaaS software, the SaaS apocalypse is overdone. Tom's worried about building Qt. What is the future of a business like his? Is there a point of buying the product off the shelf and paying Tom and Prasad a fee, or do we see a world where it actually makes sense to build it?
SaaS isn't going anywhere, right? So like you can build anything you want, and then building it's the fun and easy part. Then it gets out there and you use it, or something goes wrong, or you have to roll back your data, or how does it work with something else, right? So the product is just part of it, right? Keeping it running and evolving it, investing in it, getting product feedback, working with users, right? Yes, AI will help accelerate a lot of that, but we're just going to have better products, right? Like all of this friction that we see now, and Qt is going to work on it, Happy Robot's going to work on it, Augment's going to work on it. Everyone's going to work on their way to take friction out of day to day. And we're just going to see the things that are exceptions right now. Handling an appointment is an exception. Companies like Qt and others out there are going to do a great job of handling it, right? And then our customers are going to keep coming to us for more judgment-based work. So as far as like SaaS apocalypse and all that, yeah, there's some SaaS companies out there where you can recreate it. I'll build my own Trello board because I like managing my thoughts better than something else. I don't need to buy Trello, right? Something like that's pretty disruptible, right? But an appointment scheduling application that's woven into the fabric of all these other organizations, and you can leverage it, right? And it just works, and you don't have to worry about it, and it's cost effective enough. The tokens might be more expensive than just buying a really good deterministic product that doesn't need AI everywhere.
Yeah, the implementations, you do a lot of work with TMSs. Yeah. You guys have done integration. You worked with Sonar to do this. That's always a pain, is getting time. I don't know if there's anyone who works for a TMS in here, but you guys make our lives difficult as software vendors because we can't get into you also make your customers' lives difficult because you can't get into the queue. Not queue, but queue. And that's something that I think having distribution, that friction, actually does create value. We've seen it in payments. I know Cass and Tony's over there from Cass. Payments companies sold off because it was this ridiculous idea, by the way, that AI was going to replace MasterCard and Visa. And so there's all these things that are happening, but there's a lot of noise. One thing I am intrigued, and I'd love to get your thought about is, so Trimble has announced that they're selling, or there's been a report, I don't think they've actually come out and commented on it, about selling their transportation business. There's this debate that we've been having on FreightWaves today about whether or not a company like Trimble ends up winning in an AI world or ends up losing. Are they net better or worse? I'd love to get your take on that.
I think truthfully, each organization has its niche and they found their product market fit out there. And whether it's meaningful to Trimble or not, right, as those individual business units, right, there's a whole slew of organizations out there that depend on it to run their enterprises. And change is hard. And back to earlier, change is scary, right? And so it's like, which fire do I want to fight today? And AI can do all these great things, but is it going to reimagine and retrain my whole workforce? I think, whether it's Trimble or anyone else, right? It's not just the TMS, it's your customers, it's the ecosystem. And you mentioned connectivity, all this stuff, right? It's what we do. It's like orchestration is everything. Good, clean data as a foundation. And whether it's, any TMS provider or any AI provider, like, we have a partnership with Augment, right? And they're a great company doing cool things. And they create all of this flow, right? And it's the more modern stuff. But at the end of the day, that has to get back into your enterprise systems. And your enterprise systems need to talk to them, which is a little easier, but it has to feed back perfectly, because in supply chain, your data is either 100% right or it's wrong. And so whether it's Trimble or Augment or Oracle or anything in between, good, clean data underneath is the foundation of everything we're talking about here, but not just in that system, but moving it between systems so all of these things can bolt down and create an ecosystem. And it's not a lot different than the AI ecosystem out there, which is, do I want to create a fabric of what works for my organization, or do I want to just pile it into some stack where I don't have a lot of control? And, where's my competitive advantage and where's my tribal knowledge go? And I think that's the bigger debate than any one particular tool.
I mean, mission critical systems are incredibly, working with large corporate enterprises that still have AS400 sitting in the back. And I think AS400 drives 80% of the trucking industry is dispatched on a green screen AS400. That is hard. And anyone who's ever tried to do an enterprise conversion knows how hard that is. My sort of statement to that or belief is that actually Trimble wins in an AI world more so than even some of the up and coming companies, because AI makes it easier to have the spaghetti of all those interdependent systems that they've acquired really talk to one another. Because you pointed out the data is key. Yeah. And that's, if you could critique Trimble out of in the room from Trimble, their ability to flow data between systems has always been a problem.
I think, yes, I agree. And I don't think the AI makes the spaghetti easier. I think it makes it more important. I think, and we really believe and see it every day, which is, at massive, massive scale, I'm talking like billions of transactions per month, right? Using AI to do that is super cost crazy, right? It's just ineffective. And so, like everyone's so hyped up about this, but like the balance of the right amount of AI with the right amount of traditional deterministic code that does things perfectly every single time, that's where spaghetti becomes manageable, right? And it's not that AI just takes over it. It's no different than writing the article. It's no different than, being creative and on a prompt in front of your desktop. It's how do I do it in a way that I actually can understand it better and see it better and move it from an IT function to business people understanding what their solution, what their enterprise looks like.
So we've probably the most successful AI company, at least according to Wall Street, in freight is C.H. Robinson. And the reason I say that is that they have gotten rewarded substantially and tremendously from their investors because of their quote-unquote AI strategy. In the industry, I think we look at that, and going back to our earlier conversation about the fact, and a lot of this took place in Chicago, by the way, is a lot of this was just restructuring of the business model. C.H. Robinson had perhaps gotten bloated. Where's your take on that? Are you with companies like Robinson, companies, I know it's a competitor of Redwood, but generally, are we actually seeing true AI implementation, or is this, going back to our earlier conversation, a way to reset the business model?
Yeah, two things can be true, right? So, for us at Redwood, like with Redwood Connect, like we sell it to other logistics service providers, right? There's other carriers and 3PLs and LSPs using our integration fabric to solve, very similar problems. And it's with CH, I think it's, all of those things can be true, right? Which there could be bloat, there could be reduction in force, there could be investment in AI, there could be change of the process. And, not to be overly cliche, but it's a journey, not a destination. And they're well on their journey and they're telling a great story about it. And, in an industry where, let's be honest, right? Everything we do is managed by exception, right? We're looking for efficiencies constantly. And before AI, right, it was how much workflow can we automate? And now with AI, it's can we automate more and can we have agents keeping an eye on the things we traditionally do? Not only is CH doing it and doing a good job explaining it to the market, but everyone should be doing it. Everyone should be looking at it and investing in it. And, they're rewarded handsomely because you can, track their P&L publicly, and other organizations that are private need to be thinking the exact same way, which is, how do I get the most out of the automation that just happens lights out all the time? And then think about where are exceptions, but also what's that layer above it that's watching all of this happen and synthesizing feedback. Your point earlier on, a visualization layer, right? Like, yeah, visualization layers are really great for the person that designed it at the time with the team that they designed it, and they have the charts that they like. And 3 hours later, they have a customer yelling at them and they have a total different need to see something else, and it's useless, right? AI changes that, because you can just ask it a question and get your answer, right? You can ask for a new visual just by talking about it instead of waiting and going to the analytics department. So things like that are the catalyst, right, for then further innovation in process and automation. And again, going back to what I was trying to get at here, which is just the DNA of the organization has to evolve, where what we do as a business is built into our prompts, it's built into what we do, and then we have a layer of kind of watching all of it. And I think CH is doing a nice job.
Yeah, it's funny you talk about that, because having run a processing business and I bought enterprise grade core systems, you have this report bloat where you're going to have a report that does, you think it says the same thing or it's labeled different things, and you're like, why does this company have 10 reports that mean different things?
Or 6 versions of
And then they yell at you when you pull the wrong report down.
Right.
Like, and that's because some customer along the journey asked them to build a report, and like, oh, we'll just continue to build it. It's always a challenge. Like you said, AI gives you a custom experience. You can create a report for that one use case. I think is pretty important. So Eric, what are we not thinking about, just to close this out? What is not something that we've talked about that you think everyone in this room should be thinking about? And in terms of implementing AI in their business, what is it that they should be like? What are the rules of engagement?
HR is going to be a function of people and agents. Back to the Minions example, right? Like, to make it really, really simple, you wouldn't just hire a bunch of employees and tell them to, do their best guess and get out there and then screw something up. And it's okay, you're a robot, right? Like, you said something stupid and you just totally ruined my brand reputation. So if you think about like an agent, just like an employee, who reviews what they say, who thinks about customer feedback, who realizes, how they work, who thinks about, how they interact with other employees. What if you have to offboard one? Who takes the work of that agent if you don't have one ready? What if you roll back? How does it work with this other fleet of agents you've created, and all of the people that are creating judgment and value around it? And so it's not specifically about the agents, but it's the future of work, right? What does the org look like when knowledge can go horizontal, up and down, decisions can be made, you can make massive impacts to productivity and change? Who's accountable for these things that can get rolled out and create this fabric? And, do you have a learning enterprise, right, where this is managed, or you're just building things on top of each other and you pull one out and the whole thing can collapse?
I mean, ultimately, the author, whoever driving the models, at least in my world, I used to tell our journalists is like, you're welcome to use the product, but you are still responsible for things that are on that paper. Yeah. It's funny, there's a great meme on that. This guy, he eats the poisonous mushroom, and there's a gravesite, and they're talking about, and the old adage, yes, you're correct, I'm sorry, but he's dead. So anyways, Eric, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so we are going to talk about sort of AI in general, how to make it actually useful. So let's kind of start out and talk about what do people get wrong when they get started sometimes in that initial AI implementation and sort of going from concept to actual value creation?
Yeah, the beauty of AI is it also makes building software easy. That creates a platform that allows people to overcome small context and easily interact with multiple documents and extract value. Sounded really good. There was also a cluster of companies that went after fundamentals of businesses and other industries, trying to help them with documents. For example, Harvey.ai, system that's built for legal professionals, and they started by understanding the intricacies of the legal industry and trying to help people with their actual legal processes, proceedings, and so forth. Fast forward a couple of months. The first cluster of companies, even though they gained valuation in excess of $10 million or tens of $millions, were impacted by subsequent release of OpenAI, where that capability natively became part of the model and their valuation went to zero. They no longer exist. Folks like Harvey are still around. They're doing great. They're growing and they're continuing to address the fundamentals of the business. And I think that's the lesson that we can draw from this is when you look at potential solution and capabilities, it is important to understand the fundamentals of your business. Wherever you derive value and truly help yourself and your partners, that's what you want to address with AI first, as opposed to jumping into corner cases that are easy to implement, but longer term, their value may be limited.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So when it comes specifically to freight, where is AI already becoming useful? Where is it just hype? Where would you recommend starting if people aren't, right? And figuring out how to sort of start implementing it into their business?
Yeah, good question. Well, hopefully all of you have started already, because it'd be kind of silly not to at this point. I think it's important to start with repeatable use cases that are prevalent in your business, that kind of addresses the core of what you do. And repeatability also allows you to build the right measurement methodology and truly understand the performance of what you're working with, which allows you, once you create that foundation, that allows you to grow from there. And I think it's really important. And in terms of where do LLMs actually help today, I think there are a couple of clusters of use cases. And if I were to characterize them, the first one would be where AI is put in a predictable situation. By nature, LLM is regressive software that predicts output based on a set of inputs, having a pretty good historical record of what have previously happened in similar situations. As long as you can control the environment, you can draw amazing results. One example comes to mind from our portfolio is pro numbers. Those of you that deal with LTL, could be a mess. A lot of them have errors. If you create LLM in an environment where it has a long history of how pro numbers proceed, how do we get them from partners, what types of patterns they follow, a lot of erroneous data that would otherwise result in pretty negative outcomes, especially on the ARAP side, when you have to go and correct whatever was poorly entered in the beginning, could be solved right away. Now, once you get to the point of trying to push the limits of LLM and put it in a scenario that's a little bit less predictable, where you have additional stimuli and more complex use cases, it is important to understand your limitation and bring humans into the loop. A lot of people are doing it, and I think when you do that, those that are successful, the products that I've seen that do it pretty well, is when you bring humans in the loop in their actual flow. Again, going back to my point about fragmented point solutions, last thing you want is your system to turn into a collection of chatbots that hit your personnel from multiple directions at all times and making them lose focus. So it's very, very important to think through user experience, and you do that. On a hype side, I would say full autonomy. It's obviously, we probably will get there at some point in time. We are definitely not there today, even though the capabilities do grow. But given the way freight operates, how many different systems each individual company has to deal with in order to serve their customers. And historically, we have pretty low level of digitization of our processes and how do we look at outcomes. Having a model come in and figure it out on our own is going to be pretty hard. Hopefully one day it's going to happen.
So let's talk a little bit more about that. What makes freight a harder use case in some ways than just a generic AI implementation or use case?
Yeah, first and foremost, the stakes are a lot higher. The cost of failure for us, especially comparing to various consumer use cases that we see throughout the industry, is so much higher. Like all of you have been through COVID, you guys have seen what happens if you can't get coverage, your trucks don't show up, manufacturing, ability to deliver medicine. There's so many negative consequences. It's the bar is naturally higher. And we've relied on humans to meet that bar. Hopefully now we can start taking bites out of that. The other part is our systems, I kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier, are too fragmented. And not only are they fragmented, our other players in the industry, we do deal with a lot of outdated technology. When you have to communicate with multiple remote systems, you have to do it over outdated channels that makes the data you have, A, hard to get, and B, oftentimes just old and stale, and you have to deal with that. That is, again, I believe that's a pretty significant challenge we are able to overcome it to a degree, but it's going to take a lot more effort to get there. And last but not least, humans still like to talk to humans. And guys on HyperRobot talked first. There are a lot of advances where certain interactions are really well suited to be done robotically and super useful. But there are still so many scenarios when people want to have somebody on the other side of the phone when they have a problem. And I think gaining that confidence and getting comfortable with AI, and obviously AI systems need to evolve too to get to the point where you can actually rely on that, is still quite a bit far away.
What are you seeing working in your business?
Yeah, we can talk about a couple of use cases. So I think one of the more illustrative one would be document processing. So processing the PODs, BOLs, and whatnot. It was an interesting case study for us to watch the capability of LLMs, understand how it applied to this segment of the business, and also compare it versus legacy technology, because our starting point was quite a bit of computer vision that already drove those processes. So we started pretty small. We picked one type of document. We worked with multiple vendors, especially in the early days. Results were not amazing. So a lot of training, a lot of back and forth, a lot of interactions, partitioning larger problem into smaller spaces. Finally, we started seeing positive results. And as we started building up different document types, started understanding the contract language, the framework around it, be more cognizant of ERP cycles, what we ended up with was not a model and singular solution, but rather an ensemble of different models that operate on their own pieces of partition problem space, where they're all fit for purpose. And I think it's also very important to take away that there isn't one model that does everything. You don't want that from economic perspective and data retention perspective. You want to find the right tool for the job. Once you're able to put it together and address the entire space, it becomes a really, really powerful value proposition. So going through all that, we got to the point where we now run through the automated systems, tens of thousands of PODs per week. And pretty high degree of precision. And I think we've eliminated over 50% of disputes that would otherwise come out of it. So again, kind of being able to iterate on the same problem space and finding the right tools, I believe would help.
So that's a great stat as far as reducing disputes by 50%. How, when you're getting started, do you measure outcomes and the success of AI implementation or new rollouts, adjusted processes, new products?
Yeah, it's. I think the first thing you look. So I would say AI is very helpful in two clusters of problems. One is efficiency. I think a lot of folks here have spoken about it, will speak about it more. And the other one is optimization. So starting with efficiency, I believe what's really important is to first establish the measurement methodology. Again, going back to the nature of our business, a lot of processes are not very well documented. The success is a little bit questionable, so you want to establish the baseline that you can measure. Once you have that, as long as you can maintain the bar of performance and precision for a specific use case. So for example, if you want your trackers to do more tracking calls, with or without AI, you need to first understand what does success look like for that individual and that process. And then you start trying to scale it up and you ask for twice the output from an individual or more and more and more based on type of tools that you offer them. On the other side of the spectrum, when you look at optimization problems, the way we approach measuring success there is putting the AI-based models in shadow mode next to legacy and continuously see if you can see a statistical signal that tells you that the new approach is actually better than the old one. So you have to kind of pick your measurement methodology, but you need to make sure one is established. And I think in freight, in many cases, historically, we were not very good at collecting data and measuring data, and that's something that's really important to make this successful.
So set a baseline, but then talk more about, for some of us aren't super tech savvy, when you say shadow mode, what does that mean?
That means a system that would run in parallel to what you have today without acting on data. So for example, if you have an existing system that optimizes how many orders go on the truck and what type of routes the truck would actually follow, you could continuously see how the legacy system performs, while the new system would try to do the same job using the new tools and new data and show you what it would have done differently. So then you do like A to B comparison of legacy way of doing something and proposed way of doing something. And if one is better, that's probably something that you want to do.
So you talked about in early days, the early implementation, there were some bumps. What do you say to people, and I think Craig mentioned it this morning as well, when you sort of try to implement AI in the beginning, or you try to get started and it doesn't work exactly how you'd hoped, and how do you encourage people to iterate, and what do you say to people who gave it a try and kind of gave up?
Yeah, I think you're on the right path here. I believe iteration is the key here. And by iteration, I mean probably three different things. One is iteration of the model capability. It's something that we get as fundamental models improve their capabilities. They grow very, very fast, very, very rapidly. And sometimes they amaze you in new releases, and that's something you could take advantage of. And something that wasn't there before, or was harder, or was more expensive, may no longer be the case. The second part, and where we see difficulties adopting AI for ourselves and across the industry, is digitizing your processes. Kind of what I mentioned earlier, when you plop a model in your system, making sure there is enough knowledge for a model to consume to be successful. It is a process. And usually when people start, they may not have those assets to feed the model to be successful. So as you iterate and you develop more and more capabilities, it should be easier and easier. It's not going to be free, but it's still going to be there. And the last but not least is the adoption and how you work with your human partners. There is a famous study from MIT not so long ago that showed that 95% of AI proof of concepts did not succeed due to adoption. So making sure that you bring your team aboard from the very beginning, make sure they understand the value, as opposed to throwing new capability in the environment that is just adversarial to adopt that environment. You kind of need to manage that process. It may take a few turns of the crank to introduce the new tools to your operational partners, make sure they know this, and take their feedback. Make sure you're proactive. They're the experts. They know how this runs. The last thing you want is a bunch of expensive engineers go off in some dark basement, come up with a product that doesn't perfectly address what you want. So the closed loop and working with your partners, with humans in your company, with your external partners is extremely important.
Yeah, I agree. I think people help support what they help create. So bringing your team along for the process makes a big difference when it comes to adoption. So I think obviously everyone in this room is pretty interested in AI and probably has more experience than sort of the average. Interestingly, I spoke a couple of months ago to a room full of shippers and manufacturers. None of them had adopted AI into their systems at all. We've certainly seen significantly more adoption on the brokerage and 3PL side. So what would you tell shippers when they're evaluating their logistics provider and their logistics provider's use of AI?
It's also an excellent question. So I would start with the governance and what do you actually do with data and provenance of the models. You need to be, the model solution providers need to be very, very clear what happens with your data. You do not, obviously, you need to protect it. You don't want it to become somebody else's property. You don't want it to walk away. You want to make sure it's properly used. You want to make sure you have control. And if it needs to be deleted whenever you want it, it actually is an option for you. I think it's really, really important. The other part is kind of looking at a lot of AI offerings on the market that I have to do for my job. But I could tell you the marketing materials for AI became amazing due to use of AI. And it looks really, really good. So you kind of need to go past the marketing a little bit. And what we have discovered early on, building our own AI solutions, is that traditional benchmarks are not an ideal indicator for how a system will perform in your environment.
Okay.
So early on, like I kind of mentioned, our work with documentation, we had to build our own benchmarking system to truly understand how the models perform. So every new release of Anthropic or OpenAI or any other model on the market does actually give you a benefit in your environment. So bridging this gap from benchmark or synthetic data to your own environment, that's a conversation you need to have with your vendor. Understand how will they absorb the knowledge that you have in the company, and how will the data stand up, how will their solutions stand up to the data and the conditions that you have. Like there isn't like an automated translation. You need most likely need to try it and have the data conversation first and try it later to make sure that the solution actually performs as advertised. Of course, the cost needs to be kept in mind. That's very, very important. And the last but not least are the edge cases. Now, we operate in extremely complex environments. We deal with a lot of edge cases on a daily basis. They are very, very complex. So I don't think it's reasonable to expect a vendor to know what they are to begin with, but you have to establish a protocol. What happens when you encounter one? How do you recover? How do you involve different parties? And how do you drive to a successful outcome?
Inside of Uber, what AI use case are you most proud of right now that you guys have been able to implement?
That's a very good question. There is a lot. We actually just did a hackathon where we've been able to knock out 60 use cases. Many of them are in production, so kind of a kid in a candy store situation here. I would say the document AI that I mentioned earlier is probably a good example because it is so impactful and it runs the entire gamut of life cycle of a load. The other interesting example would probably be the appointment scheduling. Also a very, very meaty use case. I think statistically we have 1.5 billion appointments that are scheduled in the US every year. So again, getting to the point of taking friction, taking a lot of like manual labor out of this is really, really important for us. Also started small, got unstructured information out of email, applied it to our system, and started kind of raising the bar on automation, resulting with pretty positive automation outcome.
So we did a hackathon, I guess it's been a little over a year now at Sonar, same idea. And you said kid in a candy store. That's how I felt too. I mean, incredibly interesting to not just, these are the problems I think we need to solve with AI, but to have the users who are actually working the processes and have different problems than you might see every day, come up with solutions for those things. And again, like what you talked to, before, that people support what they're a part of building. So getting that input from the beginning makes such a big difference from adoption too. So highly recommend that as an idea. Love that you guys are doing it. I loved it. I was like giddy that night after we did it, and the next day it was super cool. So.
Interestingly enough, we do measure developer productivity as well. So after the hackathon, we saw a pretty significant spike in that.
It's because they're inspired, right?
They're excited. Even though they went back to do whatever they were doing before the hackathon, they were so happy, energized, and
we had people working on the hackathon ideas like at night and on weekends, like doing their normal job because they were just excited about the project, right? So great idea. Okay, so what's next in the world of AI, specifically when it comes to supply chain and logistics? What do you think's next?
AI has been amazing. The capabilities are growing. I think what I'm super excited about is continuous increase of context with what models could do, and our ability to throw more and more complex use cases to them, and then being able to handle it. Obviously, we're quite far away from full autonomy, but the context grows day by day. Kind of the example that I used were with original PDF reading, you could extract a certain segment and not even look at the full document. And now you could operate on gigantic clusters of PDFs and get meaningful data pretty fast. That's been pretty cool. I also believe that as we continue building agentic software and build agentic capabilities, ability to have solutions that are obviously cognizant of your business context, but they could interact with the core of your business using protocols such as MCP or A2A, is starting to take significant chunks out of what used to be legacy software stack. Like we all maintain older software, we have to deal with that. It's not practical to rewrite the whole thing, but this approach would allow us to make surgical incisions in that giant blob of logistics software we all operate with, making it more efficient. And that is absolutely amazing. And one other thing that's kind of showing up in literature quite often is self-learning AI that's coming up, where AI would look at the output of their actions, try to see if it matches the expectation, retrains itself, and does better next time. Kind of what we expect humans to do, but all of you know it's hard for a human. But there are some early signs that AIs in certain environments are able to actually do that and improve whatever they do, improve their processes and outcomes too. So hopefully that's going to become more prominent.
Yeah, I think the generative AI, the learning is very cool. Also a bit scary based on what the expectations are. That where are they coming from, right? Like what is, who says what's better, right?
Silicon Jackson. Yeah, you should have worn green. Green's a good color. It's it's almost football season, so go Bears.
We were in
Baylor
Chicago.
Bears?
Oh, Baylor Bears. I thought
Not
you meant
Chicago Bears.
I'm in
no.
Chicago, and I thought you meant
You're
Chicago
a Green
Bears.
Bay.
I was very
You're a Green Bay native.
taken aback. Yeah.
So our first, there's some Green Bay fans in here. Our first guest. So this is a show that Julie and I do every single day from noon to 2. Hopefully some of you guys have tuned in. If you haven't tuned in, hopefully you've seen some of the clips on social media, where we get the chance to meet the most influential folks that are in our industry, the most influential innovators, executives. And I think it's fitting to have Jet McCandless, who's arguably one of the most, if not the most successful founder to come out of the venture capital era in freight. So we consider that really 2015 to the modern day. And hey, Jet, how are you?
Hey, Craig. Hey, Joe.
Jet's story is quite interesting because he is from the industry. And I've always said that founders that are not from this industry that try to figure it out oftentimes struggle. One of the most common things among successful founders, particularly ones that have reached the unicorn stage, which you have for a couple of years, have industry experience. And Jet actually started his career doing the Walmart account for Yellow. Rest in peace.
Yeah, both. Oh, I guess one.
What's that?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Yellow and Roadway, yeah, both rest in peace.
really sad tenure of those companies to go out. So you've been around this industry a long time.
That's right, yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about LSP 44. So Project 44 is a name that I think many of the folks in the room will know. Multi-billion-dollar valuation, one of the fastest growing SaaS companies. Again, probably the fastest growing SaaS company to come out of the venture era in freight. But this week, I believe yesterday, we covered it on FreightWaves Today. You actually split it into 2 separate companies. We'd love to hear what LSP you get. You're wearing the new swag,
Yeah,
new line.
absolutely.
Love to hear what LSP 44 is and what that means for Project 44.
Yeah, absolutely. So Project 44, started in 2014, and Greg, I appreciate the kind words, and Julie, thanks for having me on here today. We started with a really simple idea back in 2014, which was let's build a one-to-many API platform. And we started in the LTL space. And that made a lot of sense because when you looked at other industries like fintech, finance, trade, communication, all these adjacent industries, that there was already this connective tissue that helped data being transmitted back and forth. And I think and a lot of people here in the room know that one of the main problems of their industry is information asymmetry between all the parties. So we started selling out to the logistics service providers, which let's define logistics service provider because perhaps I've been over in Europe too much, but that some of us were talking about that back there. But logistics service provider, as we think of it, is a 3PL, a broker, a freight forwarder, a third-party warehousing company. And so it's this umbrella term from all of those, whether they have an NVO, an IAC, a carrier authority or not. So we started selling them. They were the innovators. You think about the innovation bell curve, and those are the companies that innovate way before the shipper themselves typically do. And that worked great. And I think out of our first 100 customers, about 82 of them were LSPs. Worldwide Express wrote the first check. Blue Grace was second. DSV was third. And we got really great traction. And then when we went to take that product to the shippers, it was a disaster. They basically had no idea at all what a middleware was or data as a service. They couldn't understand how it worked into their workflow. And every time you went into a shipper, they would bring their top, what they would call IT person, which was an EDI person. And they were really hell-bent on keeping EDI in place. So we started building applications on top of this platform. And we got a lot of traction with that. But where we are now is that at the end of the day, We have this amazing data platform that's the world's largest logistics data graph. And this data platform is very valuable to shippers and LSPs. But when you think about the go-to-market motion, how an LSP buys from any software tech company versus how a shipper buys is very difficult. And you can see there's a graveyard of venture-backed startup and bootstrap companies that try to make that transition, they can't make it. Well, we successfully made it, but in one way, we kind of almost weren't successful because we couldn't pull the LSP along with us very well. But the platform's there, so now what we're doing is we're going back and going, here's a go-to-market team, here's a specific tech team that can actually build out those personas on top of the platform for the LSP.
So Jet, you and I have talked both stuff we published, but also just privately about the frustrations of the logistics business. Is the fact that these customers are easy to adopt technology. Oftentimes with venture-backed companies, it's very easy for them to get initial adoption, but there's a high churn problem. We've experienced that at Sonar. Almost every company that sells in logistics, I know you've talked about some of the frustrations of companies may not even pay their bill, much less churn out. Why would you double down on a really hard and difficult client base? What's really the motivation for that?
Yeah, basically what we found across this journey, at the high water mark, we probably had close to 700 of these LSP companies. And there were some trends and things that started to happen across this journey. But the net of it is, if you're doing business with the large LSPs, they tend to have capital, they tend to have program managers, they tend to have the tech resources, and they're mature enough to engage in a constructive conversation. It tended to be the mid-market and small, and that's not the case for all of them, but there's just more of them and more bad actors that kind of are operating there. And that's where we saw the highest churn. That's where we saw the lowest NPS, the highest churn. In companies where you're kind of constantly battling the most of kind of this pride of authorship too, okay? We're just gonna build it. And when you sat down with a lot of these companies, it was very clear that that they obviously had the best tech companies in the world, better than Google and Apple, because they would tell you that the entire meeting. And it's like, well, then what are you doing here as a $50 million broker or something? And not to disparage them, because there's a lot of great $50 million brokers. So when I look at this now, when I look at the TAM of kind of this top 250 LSP, like for us, we can get to several $1 billion of revenue for LSP 44. And currently that's enough revenue to satisfy my thirst with this brand to go after.
So
why split into two companies versus just two different teams?
Well, what happens is, you ever been to Jack in the Box?
Like the restaurant?
Oh, no, I have not.
Yeah, I've been in Texas. We had Jack in the Box.
What happens is a Jack in the Box is this fast food restaurant that is highly visited after hours, late in the morning. And
Crystal.
We call that fourth and fifth meal.
It's the Crystal.
It's the Waffle House.
Okay.
Yes. So if you go there, though, you can get a taco, you can get, wontons, you can get a hamburger. And when you go, kind of everything starts tasting the same.
Okay.
Like,
well, you're also inebriated when you go in.
I could still tell the difference between like a hamburger and like a wonton.
Taco.
Yeah. So what happens is the data platform that we have costs about $1 billion of R&D to build. It's incredibly powerful. But when you look at the use cases, they're different. And so let's say, I'll give you an example. If I go to Seattle today, we're going to go see some of our customers. Like we're see Amazon, we're see Costco, and they're going to talk to me about reducing inventory, cash on cash. How do they use the ETAs to sell more product online before it's actually in the warehousing? So we're going to have these kind of types of conversations. Also, we're talking about things for the demand planning system. And our sales reps will do excellent at that. It takes a lot of training for these reps. Then let's say we drive across town to Expeditors. And the conversation is going to totally flip. It's going to talk about, like, why did RNL take 6.2 seconds to respond versus yesterday 4.9 seconds to respond to a dispatch? And the reality is that the LSPs are using us for infrastructure. And so the questions are different. How they interact with the platform, they're plugging it into their system of record. Most would probably call it TMS. And our sales reps have a really, really difficult time context switching there. And then also, when you bring back LSP has a PIR, a product improvement request, and you send it over to this list, and that list is always going. Some are bugs, some are enhancements. It's a very long list. Well, the LSPs, it's difficult to get the priority. with the culture that we had at Project 44. And so we said, all right, well, let's take an R&D team. Let's make sure that the use cases that are being built are always specific to the LSP. So it's a really hyper-focused team. Let's make sure it's forward deployed engineers because LSPs buy in very, very fast sales cycles. Let's make sure the sales reps are only talking the LSP language so they can add a lot more value to those conversations with the LSPs.
So Jed, one can't help. First of all, how big is the logistics business, the LSP business today?
It's decent size, about 30 million.
And then you spread it out. It's profitable, as you mentioned in the press release, that it's a profitable business. The shipper business is much larger by magnitudes, is my understanding of sort of understanding your business. The question I have, is this a financial engineering question? Is the idea of splitting these businesses creates optionality for your investors? Was this driven by, like when we split our media business, I mean, I've said this before. Earlier, someone was asking me, Julie, like, what's the connection between FreightWaves and Sonar? I was like, well, like, does Julie work for Sonar or does she work for FreightWaves? It's like, look, if I didn't have investors, these businesses make complete sense. But we spun it out because the investors don't want to be viewed as a media company. And I think the question that I'm looking at as you as the founder, is this a financial engineering outcome? Was the goal to really create two businesses that create two different sort of liquidity opportunities for your investors? Like, what was the primary motivation of splitting this into two businesses? Because you could segment the teams inside the company, but doing the physical hard split, and I know we have Nina from RXO is Brad Jacobs did exactly that. He split these businesses because it provided so much financial upside for his investors. That's sort of when I read this, I was like, it feels like a financial engineering outcome more than anything.
Yeah, I'd say, like, from a first principle standpoint, I just like to win. And when I looked at the way it was set up, it wasn't set up to win. And so that was my main driver there. Of course, I also look at what's the value to the customers. The reality is that when you have these two separate use cases internally in different languages, it's very difficult to get all the executive team and everybody understanding and speaking the same language. Our industry is incredibly complex. We're running a global business. We have employees in almost 40 countries. Our products used in 194 countries every single day. Just the nature of the business itself is complex. And then if you add in this other complexity of these highly specialized, intelligent folks like logistics service providers, and you add in these highly competent, the largest global 2,000 shippers in the world, it just adds another layer of complexity. Now, when I look at it from a financial standpoint, I do think there'll probably be some advantages too. I think the LSP 44 company will grow significantly faster than Project 44. I would guess it's probably going to grow somewhere between like 25 to 70% year over year. And when I look at the Project 44 side of the business, that's probably going to be somewhere between like a 20 to 35% grower. And part of it is just the sales cycles that shippers buy on, how fast they're going to adopt AI and these types of products. Remember, if we look at the innovation bell curve, the LSP companies are the innovators. So they're going to adopt more of this AI agents that we have faster, and that's going to create a higher growth. That said, if I was to look at the two companies, I would suspect there's probably a higher premium on Project 44 because you have these blue chip Global 2000 companies. But I think the growth rate will be higher on LSP 44.
And we had the same conversation thinking about who buys Sonar, and clearly selling into logistics businesses sort of has one set of buyers, which there aren't a lot of companies that can write huge checks.
Sure.
If you sell into financial services or shippers, the audience, the buyer universe opens up. So it goes back to the question as founder. At some point, your investors are going to expect a return of capital.
Yeah.
You've got to choose a path. Where do you end up in this? Do you end up going all in on LSP 44, or do you end up on Project 44? Because you got to pick a path at some point, right?
Yeah, but fortunately, that looks like to be that path's got quite a bit of runway on it right now. I mean, the reality is that we have a war chest of capital on the balance sheet. We have really happy customers. The NPS is in a really good spot. I'm still the largest shareholder in the company.
And the same investor at the cap table is identical.
Same cap
so
table.
You basically dividend or distributed split the cap table and the ownership, or is there a holding company at the top?
There's a holding.
The whole co owns both stocks. Is there at some point would you raise outside investor for LSP or?
It's possible. I mean, what we've created now is that we have a lot of optionality for these types of things. I mean, what I'll do initially is we don't need any capital. I mean, we are highly inquisitive from an acquisition side on either company. But what I look at a lot of these companies to acquire now, and I look at traditional growth vectors, and I really don't want the tech debt of a lot of companies that would come. So it means I've got tons of cash flow positive, and I got really, really patient investors. Like our investors are interested in a multi-decade, really big, as they would say, consequential business.
I loved how yesterday when you did the release, you talked you're going to cap the employee base at 600.
Oh, I know.
Like that was something we talked about.
Oh, as soon as it said your prior employee count current, I just
like you had 1,200, now 600.
Yes.
Julie actually asked me that on the air. Is like what my thoughts are there. I think it was an interesting. I think every CEO has that same thought. Like, hey, we've had a conversation internally. Like, this feels like a great size where you can ship, and I think AI enables you to do that. It was just interesting how you put that line in the sand, because if you go back 4 or 5 years ago, all the founders, myself, you included, we're all talking about how fast we're growing, how many people we're adding, and now the metric is no longer people.
Right.
Like, in fact, the more efficient, you talked about this a couple of years ago, is, I don't know what the term that you used for this, but the idea of having smaller staff, like the smallest being the smallest possible company that you can be, is really the dream for CEOs. But that's a complete diversion from where things were a couple of years ago.
Yeah, when we were building these companies for so long, it was how many headcount do you have, and that's how much you can accomplish. And
it's also how VCs evaluated the size of your business by looking at LinkedIn to the number of employees.
Yeah, what's the growth, and what's happening here? And there's an assumption that more people could be more productive, could be more code, or sell more deals if there was had a percentage of quota reps accomplishing their quotas. But now you just don't need it. So for folks that don't know, I said 600 people is the maximum amount that we will ever have. And this is like an interesting thing too. Like, why now for LSP 44? The reality is that 582 people were releasing code probably 3 to 5 times faster than we were a year ago. I have Slack in the system. So I could cut out more cost if I wanted to, but it's also a great opportunity. Like, well, why do that? Why not just go and service another cohort of customers with a really large SAM that's going to be innovative, and go make some money that way?
Yeah, so I want to make sure we have time to talk about what LSP44 does. So the name of the segment's the AI agent API infrastructure for logistics providers. So what does that mean operationally?
Well, when you think about this data platform I mentioned, we spent about $1 billion building, and this is about 5,100 APIs that's connected to about 282,000 carriers, basically every country and territory in the world. Now, the carriers are the primary source of data, and we bring that back, but that's never good enough for our customers. They don't want just the primary source of data signal. We have to enrich and normalize, enhance, normalize all that information. And we enrich it, enhance it through other sources, whether it's video OCR, or it's satellite, or it's using agents to help augment and improve that. That's a very, very complicated platform. And I often think that people underestimate like what that is. Some people may think that's like a visibility thing or something, but it actually goes all the way from a rate quote to an invoice. It's very, very complicated. The amount of data that goes to this in 1 month is the equivalent if you were to watch Netflix for 24 hours, 7 days a week for 8,000 years. We are streaming a lot of data through this thing. It's over 1.5 billion API calls a day. So there's this really, really huge logistics data graph in there. Now, one thing I've learned across my time is that when you create a new category, you do something, it's really hard at a shipper to get budget for something that's a net new category. As much as we may all be frustrated with, or we may or may not like it, if Gartner doesn't have a magic quadrant for it, then you are pushing water up a hill to get something. And the reality is a lot of these applications, these software companies, are kind of cleverly aligned with people. Like, I need a TMS. Well, I'm a VP of transportation. You want me to do transportation? I need a TMS. I'm the VP of warehousing. I need a WMS. So we have taken this platform, this data platform, then we just build applications on top that align with budget, where the value can be extracted, like a transportation management system, a visibility application, yard management, and a last mile. None of the OSPs that are in here would probably ever use those applications at all. What they want is in this data platform, which is execution, visibility, intelligence, and automation. they want to plug that platform with an API into what they would call their TMS. That may be a proprietary TMS or a third-party system. But it's what they don't want to do anymore is write all these bespoke connections point to point with all these different companies anymore, maintain them, security, as the carrier's network is dynamic, onboard them, build onboarding tools, set up all these agent companies that are have different strengths and weaknesses. So that's what it is.
So Jet, obviously you've got this massive network.
Yeah.
And really, when we think about the power of a network, everybody's dream, Andrew Leto's in here somewhere, I saw him earlier. Everyone's dream is the idea of building a marketplace, building I hate to use the word load board because we all know how archaic that technology is, but ultimately building a matching engine.
Yeah.
I mean, it strikes me that this with LSP44, you have the buy and sell side, which puts you in a really unique position to create a new marketplace or exchange. Is that where this heads?
I don't think so because it competes with the customers. Now, in a lot of our MSAs with LSPs, we have language in there, and most of it goes back years and years. I remember XPO was one of the first ones that really wanted this, and I think maybe Ryder or someone. But they were concerned that we would have all this data and that we could disintermediate them because there was so much passion and so many people want these marketplaces out there. And so we would put in contracts like we're never going to get an MC broker authority or carrier authority or NVO or IAC so that people could be appeased. And really to have a marketplace, you probably need
but DAT is, I mean, with Convoy, they've sort of entered that game. You could argue that Highway with TFX has entered that game, and they all have this sort of, eventually Truck Stop has got pieces of that too. What stops you guys? Why wouldn't you do that?
Yeah.
This feels like the natural evolution.
Well, again, I think it's a couple things. One is contractually, I've never had the dream of it. And so contractually, I've always been okay with it. Now I have contracts that have it, even if I wanted to, which I don't. The second thing is a lot of the CEOs of some of these really big companies, they're the first ones to bet on Project 44. So I wouldn't want to compete with them. The other thing is,
I'm not even talking disintermediating them. I'm talking about the load board concept of being a vendor marketplace.
If you want to, so I guess I would say we have features that probably accomplish that, and I'll explain that to you. But if you just go back and you look at this is one of the things that I think logistics tech, there aren't a lot of people that have made a lot of money in logistics tech. And one of the reasons why is, well, I don't know if we want to unpack all of it, but let's just assume that there's not a lot of people who made a lot of money in logistics tech, despite all the attempts and how big the SAM is. But if you really look at the hyperscale and how the big tech companies make money, they make money by spinning the meter. And so I'm interested in spinning the meter and getting that type of revenue. Now, Craig, when you talk about, you can go into our platform and you can see any carrier. You can see 282,000 carriers. You can see how they perform physically, and you can see how they perform digitally. You can look up those carriers' performances. You can invite those carriers to be part of your network. And on our platform, you can have agents or APIs do the rate quotes, do the negotiations, do the tender, provide the visibility, track all the documents. So in that sense, you have that infrastructure for the workflow automation, and you have the ability to search for carriers based on quantifiable performance that I don't think anyone else in the world
ultimately, I think what ends up happening, they've got their own matching marketplace. I remember Shelley Simpson years ago, JB Hunt, the CEO, asked me point blank, this is before she signed with Sonar, are you ever going to get into load matching? I said, no, we'll never get into load matching. And that was the deal, because I think as you point out, brokers don't want to be disintermediated, don't want to have a marketplace. DAT, in many ways, is a necessary evil as they see it. They have to find this sort of fragmented capacity, but they don't. There's no love lost between the industry and DAT.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say, I just talked about those kind of features that we have of being able to, find trucks on quantifiable performance. And I bet you there's probably not an LSP in the world that probably uses that feature because
define capacity.
Yeah, because we don't have sales reps or CS people over the last year until this launch yesterday that are actually going there and showing them that this exists for them to use. But whoever uses it, it's going to have a huge competitive advantage.
Yeah. Well, Jet, unfortunately, we're out of time. Man, this has been great. I have so many questions. We got to have you on again on FreightWaves today to go into this deeper.
Yeah,
I'm excited to see where
Thanks for having
LSP 44.
Thank you very much.
I am curious in 5 years which business you'll be talking about on stage with us. Will it be P44 or LSP 44? We'll make our bets.
I'll be like,
so.
Mars 44 or something over there. I don't know.
All right, Jet,
Thanks,
Jet,
guys.
everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Thanks, Julie.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Cheers.
All right, so we do have a lineup of quite a few guests coming up next. We are going to be joined by Alyssa Norcross from Revanova, then Megan Orth from C.H. Robinson, and David Bell from CloneUp. So we'll get to do a little bit of time with each of them. But it's exciting to do the show live from here.
It is cool. It's cool to do it live. You obviously get great guests that we have. By the way, I think Chicago is such a great city.
Yes.
It's such a beautiful venue. And I was talking to our host. We do a lot of events. And for those that don't know how hard putting on an event, it's like putting on a wedding every single time, bringing all these people together. And everything's got to go well. They've done an amazing job here at the venue.
The venue's done well. I mean, the events crew.
The young lady who's running the show, I was watching her because she is unusually attentive. Usually you go to these event centers and they sort of get everything set up and you have to find the staff, but they've done a fantastic job. So look, please give a hand.
Jen's done a great job
Who's
too.
next?
Next is Alyssa Norcross from Revanova. Yes, welcome. Hello. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. Hi.
Alyssa, how are you?
Pretty good. You did a very nice intro for me. My fun fact, not that you asked, but I went to a wedding here probably 2 years ago, and
At
the post office,
Oh,
yeah.
wow. Okay.
So the lobby you walk into, that was where the ceremony was and the dancing. But I sang karaoke like where we had lunch. So Sheryl Crow picture.
Wow.
I won't be doing that today.
Was it
but
a duet?
There was, yeah. My now fiance sang. He actually does the Sheryl Crow, and I do the Kid Rock.
So this wasn't your wedding.
It was not my wedding, yeah.
Are they still married?
They are, yeah.
So this was a good omen for,
Yeah, it was
for
a-
good
yeah.
things. So if there's a transaction in this room to be done, then hopefully they stay married as well.
Yeah.
And we're happy to celebrate that. So,
Yeah, definitely.
look, for those that don't know the story of Revanova, I'd love for you to sort of unpack that because I think it's a name that gets mentioned quite a bit, but it's also not as has the legacy of some of the bigger TMS. So I'd love to get you to describe what Revanova does.
Yeah, so I think I have a unique perspective on just TMSs. I came from actually the freight forwarder world, but I did the final mile at the freight forwarder. So I was kind of like I don't think it's the right term, but like the stepchild in the corner. No one really wanted to talk to me at the freight forwarder because I was just, doing the small margin stuff. But we used a TMS there, and I got a call from a recruiter, and they said, "Hey, Revanova's looking to hire a product manager." And I, took the call. I wasn't super interested in transitioning at the time, and I saw the software. It's built on Salesforce, which is a unique offering essentially because we get to rely on Salesforce's tech stack. And so when we talk about security and AI agents, we're able to basically adopt all of the infrastructure and the investment that they have at Salesforce and basically build our own tech stack on top of that. And just the flexibility that also comes with the Salesforce UI is something that's pretty unique, I would say, in the TMS business and was ultimately the reason that I wanted to switch from where I was and come over to Revanova because I was like, I sat in the job and some of the things that they demoed to me, I was like, that is the pain point that I feel every single day. And they were able to do it just by, standard out of the box functionality. So, it's about 13 years old, I believe now, built on Salesforce. We recently transitioned or expanded into the carrier market. So our bread and butter is on the brokerage side, and now we're going into the asset-based side as well, which unique problems and unique tech on that side as well.
So Liz, I got to ask the question. We're at an AI summit.
Yep.
The hot thing to do is vibe code.
Yeah.
And I've had so many people on X reach out and say they vibe coded a TMS. And like, someone laughed, chuckled. I'm telling you, this happens quite often when people say they vibe coded something. Tell me why that is a bad idea. Other than you don't get them as a customer, why can't you just vibe code a TMS to success?
So I would say, quite honestly, we've been building Revenova for 13 years, as I just mentioned, and we are still needing to build on it. So it's someone mentioned this earlier in one of the sessions, but it can't be anyone's side project. And I feel similarly about a TMS. It's just such a large, integral piece of systems and operations that vibe coding, although has its uses, I don't think it's going to have the depth that's necessary to actually do what you guys need it to do.
In terms of what? Like, what are the features that you can't vibe code?
I mean, technically, I think you could vibe code anything, right? Like, not to say it's not possible. I just think it's the depth. It might look good, but is it actually going to do what you need to do? Is it going to have that open infrastructure so that you can connect to different partners out there? Is it going to have the security that you might need for your carrier data, your customer data, your financial data? So I think there's just a lot of the depth is what I would be cautious of. Like maybe vibe coding a customer portal.
It strikes me that the smaller fleet operators, if it's a fleet of 5 trucks, where it's just some dude that's managing that small fleet, could probably vibe code himself. It's moving from Excel or paper to or QuickBooks to something that probably works. But when you've got enterprise grade, particularly communications and data,
Integration,
I think that is a totally different game, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think, you gave me the answer. I can't expand on that any better. But yeah, I think the integrations is a big thing. And I think scalability, right? When you're talking about, do you want to grow your brokerage or do you want your brokerage to stay where it is today? Definitely from the carrier market that we're seeing, we have some fleets that are like, 10 trucks, but they're looking to expand either through acquisitions or just, buying trucks themselves. And I think they're very interested in investing in an enterprise level for that scalability and what we're able to offer.
Tell us a little bit about how you're using AI at Revenova, what's next, what you're seeing.
Yeah, so I've got kind of 2 answers, right? For the customer-facing thing or side of the business, we are definitely looking at a lot of the use cases that you've already heard today. So load creation and quotes, that's something that we already have available with our product Artemis. And then we're expanding into that. So document parsing, PODs is another big one. And then obviously track and trace is another area that we have heard customer requests for, and they're super interested in that investment. And internally, I'm super excited because I think as a tech company, if we're not adopting AI ourselves, then we essentially need to talk the talk that we're selling to you all. And so we've connected our source code to an AI engine. And so we're able to, from a non-technical person, interact with the code in a way that we previously had to do by either asking a developer to take the time. And that's been super, super beneficial for resolving support cases. I'm in product, so writing specs and just having a clear understanding of the depth of the product and making more informed, faster decisions. So internally, I think the sky's the limit, but it's very interesting. We're also talking about a repository of some sort, so that, again, there's kind of this database that anyone internally at the company has the ability to interact, like this conversation that I'm having with you, but with our actual source code, which is super valuable for all the different positions internally at Revenova.
All right, Alyssa, I got to ask, what's hot, what's not? Like, what is the stuff that gets overly, like, there's so much hype around AI. What are you really confident is going to be impactful? And then what do you think is overhyped?
Ooh, good question. I mean, I think we've already seen it be impactful, but again, the repetitive tasks that are easily automated, I think that we've already seen it work. We have customers using it. It's beneficial for them to take them out of the day-to-day, the monotony, and let them do kind of the higher level tasks. What's not, I think it's moving so quickly, and I am not a gambler. So I don't like to necessarily say like, oh, this is no way that's ever going to happen. Because I think starting in the industry, I'm an industry brat. So I grew up around the table. My parents were all freight forwarders. So talking to them versus where we are today, like they'd never imagined where we are. So, I can't confidently answer that. And I'm not willing to do it on this stage.
We only tape this. We'll play the tape in 5 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Julie?
What are you most excited about next at Revenova? You mentioned you're getting into the carrier arena, but what else is happening? What's exciting? What's on the horizon?
Yeah, I think kind of to Jet's point with Project 44, we're looking at restructuring is a strong word, but basically enabling our internal teams to not treat AI like a side project and really work at it and inject it into our customers' workflow. And so basically how are we thinking about doing that is like having a team that's fully dedicated to that so that we can really develop and move at the pace that we need to be able to move in order to be relevant in an ever-changing market that is AI and logistics, because we both know that, we all know, logistics moves just as quickly as AI. So I think building the teams around where we want to go as an organization is something that I'm super excited about, but also something I'd recommend for you all as you are adopting AI. It's hard to wear two hats. So have someone that's dedicated, that's really invested in doing this and implementing it so that you are successful and you aren't that like 95% that MIT noticed, didn't actually work.
Well, Alyssa, really appreciate you coming and telling Revenova's story. We next have Megan Orth, the Senior Director of Commercial Connectivity at C.H. Robinson. Thank you so much. That was great. I mean, there's so many different use cases in AI. We're going to talk to, I have said, Megan, now you're in hostile territory a bit, so you know this.
This is the third year now in a row.
I know, but we have the opportunity. I said this when I opened my opening comments, was that C.H. Robinson, at least according to Wall Street, is the most successful AI company in logistics. But the question is, how much of that is real? How much of it is you guys have restructured the business? Obviously, there's been an enormous amount of restructuring. Chicago Central Office has been restructured. How much of it is actually AI?
He brought that. At the same time, I mean, right, we've been talking, I've been on the stage 3 years now.
3 years in a row.
Yeah.
Before we had the AI summit.
Exactly.
You guys just tech.
And then last year. And then, so with that and his methodologies he's brought, at the same time, AI was starting to come into place. And so we took a very disciplined, lean approach as we did AI. So everything is data-driven. It's all metric-based. I don't know if any of you guys have had lean manufacturing, but we do A3s, we do scorecards. You're red, you're green. There is no yellow ever, right? So it's very high accountability. And then we have what we call DVMs. So every day we're meeting with our tech teams and we have business metrics that the tech teams are driving to as well. And we have red or green. And if we're red, we're problem solving. If we're green, we keep going, right? So we've used that lean AI approach as we've been developing to make sure that we are adding business value. Because at the end of the day, everyone's talking about these investments, but then what does it actually mean? What do you actually get? So we've taken our logistics, right, our experts, and then we have over 450 software engineers and data scientists, brought those groups together, and that's how we've really created this lean AI. So I can tell you it's real.
Well,
I'm living and breathing it every day.
How much of it, though, is just a business practice talking about lean as a business model versus true AI implementation? I mean, we know there's massive opportunity, but it feels like we're reported on C.H. Robinson really since we started. There was always a lot of bloat, a lot of legacy compensation structures, teams.
Bozeman definitely has done a miraculous job of getting the business to be far more efficient. And it sounds like it's cultural. I think the question that I often ask is, AI is sort of an answer for so many things on Wall Street. How much it is fundamentally being driven by AI versus just an overall business restructuring?
Yeah, so I would say we've looked at the workflows. We were talking about that earlier today too. So as you look at those workflows, you're going to get lean, right? We're going to use the AI, we're going to apply it. Then you look at spans and layers, you look at org charts. So it all naturally fits together, but it's driven by that tech enablement to get that started, right? Because volume would go up, you'd add headcount, right? It was just this cycle. And through the automation, we've been able to decouple our headcount from growth. So that's really where we focus our core on is, okay, we take a process and how can we decouple it, right? How can we continue to grow, continue to serve, and not just have to add bodies to that process?
Yeah, and I think that shows in, the metrics that you guys publish are pretty profound how more efficient it is.
Yeah.
Can you give some examples of some specific benefits you've seen?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So, I mean, when it comes to like our very first use case that Craig and I talked about 3 years ago was quoting, and we saw a 30% increase in demand. We've done work with our orders, which I think a lot of you in the room have done too, and we saw a 23% speed improvement there. And then missed pickups, with all the work we did there with LTL, we were able to see a 35% increase in reduction of missed pickups, right? So each one of these had a business metric of what we got out of it and then what the customer impact or carrier impact would be.
So where have you struggled? I'm curious, your massive business reorientation, where are the projects that perhaps everyone was excited about, and we've all done this, where we get super excited and it's like, damn, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
What have you seen related to AI that you thought you guys went in super bullish, it just hasn't achieved those?
Yeah, I would say one of the areas we went in bullish and then we had to back off. And I think that's one of the reasons that having the metrics, you get to this point because you are so passionate about it that you finally have to say, okay, we got to pivot. We got to do something different.
Lie. People do.
Right. But it is that data-driven process, and it can be hard because people are excited and they want it to work. So one of the areas we tried to use more of AI versus machine learning algorithms was pricing. And we realized pretty quickly, like, we got to have really tight guardrails on pricing. And we kept with the machine learning algorithms versus more of an AI approach. And I would say one of the things we're really staring down now, and a lot of people have talked about it today, there's a lot of common themes, is context, right? So how do you get that context from the employees and make it a what's in it for them?
Yeah.
Because that's scary. Hey, all that tribal knowledge you had in your head, I want you now to work with us and put it on the system. And so it's like I said, even 3 years ago, it's the people part of it, right? It's the human change, and it's changing very fast, and how you get people motivated, engaged in it, and not afraid of it.
I wrote an article years ago about my observations at C.H. Robinson. If you go back 20 years ago, you were the broker. I mean, at U.S. Express, we only did business with C.H. Robinson. There was no other broker we did business. We managed trends different, but it was all C.H. Robinson. Over the last 2 decades, there's been this massive fragmentation. And it felt as if the business was still reliant upon sort of this traditional, we're CH, but you've had to force change. But that also means that the veterans that have been used to this sort of business model have also had to change. And we've had our own experience in our media business and at Sonar, where the more entrenched, dedicated to the traditional business model, the people that got you there,
yep,
oftentimes fight resistance to change. How have you guys navigated that?
I mean, that's been one of the hardest things to get through is just the culture and the people and trusting the tools. Right? Yes, you might have done this and we might do it this way, but at the end of the day, the outcome's the same or even better. And so we've had to do a lot of pilots to prove to people. That's been one of the important things that we've done is, hey, we're going to run these. And I think someone earlier talked about shadow testing, right? The same concept, right? So then we can say, hey, we're doing this here and look, the results are better than what the humans were doing, right? So it's just that evolution. And again, we're really using data to tell the story even to our employees.
I was telling a story earlier. We had one of our journalists at one of our brands, not Freight brand, who just hated this newsletter, like resigned, took a different job. And I asked him why he left it, because it was, in my mind, was a less distinguished brand. It was because of this damn newsletter. And I'm like, dude, why don't, and he had used it 3 years ago. And I'm sure you guys have had this experience of, they tried ChatGPT when it first came out, and it was not great. It was better, but not great. But they never tried it again. How do you make, I mean, how that change?
The change management. And I mean, we have a team dedicated, right? That's all they do. So we do a lot of office hours. We get pilot groups. We find those, what I'll call influencers, that we know if we can convince the 2 or 3 influencers that's going to get us there. So we do the office. We do like the other thing too. And I think you guys have seen this with AI, is people can say, oh, this isn't really working. And you're like, I hear you. Just give it a little bit more.
You should check next week.
Yeah, like, it's going to get there. Yeah. So like we've had to really work through the change management on that piece, because people are used to like, oh, developer go code. It's fixed. You're good now. So keep giving us the human in the loop, like the human in the loop piece. Keep feeding us that. So here's been
the question that I think I really want to leave with is, C. Robinson is a very public company, one of the only logistics companies that's public, talking about AI, but also talking about less people. Mm-hmm. You're also, and this is like a media businesses suffer this, so I'm asking for advice from me. How do you message, hey, we're reducing staff and we're using AI, and then get the people to embrace the technology at the same time? Because these messages get lost, and we've had the same problem in media of like, the message is we want to be more efficient. We want to use the technology. And you're like, no, but we're not trying to replace you. But then your messaging is that you are. And so how do you navigate that internally?
Yeah, we just keep talking about, we have our core principles, right? And we look for those employees that have the core principles. We show, hey, they adopted it. They're doing this. Follow, right? The influencer concept. So then they can see. And then again, some roles go away, but new ones are created. Right? It might not be at the same magnitude as the old, but so if we can find those people that get it and are embracing it, and then people see, oh, they got a new role, like these roles just opened up. Yeah. So it goes back to that, right? Of just showing the culture and the people that we need going forward, and really, empowering them and showing how much more productive and valuable they can be.
Well, congratulations. I mean, the story on Wall Street has rewarded you guys well, and it's certainly deserved. And it's fun to watch the shift in the business over the last couple of years. So congratulations. I know you've been a part of that.
Yeah, it's
Big,
we'll have to have you back next year to give us a report card.
Big ship to move, and you guys are doing it, which is amazing.
Yeah.
So
it is fun to watch. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, next, speaking of reduction of people, David Bell is the founder and CEO of CloneOps. David is, Jet McCandless is arguably the most successful venture tech founder. I've argued that David Bell is the most successful founder because you actually got your start helping these guys really outsource to Columbia with Lean. And now you've started an AI company that's trying to disrupt the disruptor. What is this about?
Man, what did I get myself into? Starting an AI company. I should be retired on a beach. Yeah.
You should be, but you're not.
Yeah, it's 2 years we've been going at it, and it's changed from when I first started, what AI was going to be and where it is now. It's a whole different game.
So David, you have one of the best cap tables you look at the investor.
Just because you're on it, or
it's because I'm on it. But when I look at the investor base, it is many of the most influential people in this space are on it. I think that's a testament to you. And like this is when you launched CloneOps, it was before you actually had a product. You were raising money, and I think the reason you have such a rich cap table is because of the confidence that people have in you. Now we're 2 years in. The world has changed. These models have changed. Where are you at in the journey of CloneOps?
Yeah, I mean, CloneOps, when I raised the money initially, it was the first time I'd raised money for a business, and it was a little weird for me. And taking investor money, I take it very seriously. And so we burned through some cash, figuring stuff out, and then we needed more money. And then I finally got to the point where I said, I'm just not going to ask for any more money. I'm going to fund it myself. I'm going to dive in deep, be very lean and mean. I think we've raised a total of $7 million total. We haven't raised money in 9 months, and I'm funding it. We're good. We have a really good culture, a really good team. I don't have 100 engineers out there in the space, and we're going to get. I've been saying this since the beginning. I want to get the business profitable and cash flow positive.
Doesn't that feel good? I mean,
yeah,
Lean was a profitable business.
Yeah, Lean was very profitable. I mean, we scaled that over 200 million and never put $1 of capital in to fund it. Funded itself. So similar to what we're doing at CloneOps, like our customers pay us right away, and we don't need money to fund receivables, and the margins are good in tech, and we're able to to have a pathway to where there's light at the end of the tunnel for the journey and get profitable. I'd like to think I will probably be the first profitable AI company. I like the challenge. If any of them are, probably know there's some big money was raised out there, and when you hire hundreds of forward deployed engineers, I think it's hard to be profitable. But
is it hard? Because AI investors love throwing money at AI. Yeah. You have a fantastic track record. Like I said, you've got the best cap table of any freight people that are on the cap table. Convoy arguably probably had the best cap table, but none of these people were in freight. Is it hard not taking money when all these investors are trying to throw money at AI companies, or is your view, hey, I'm building this to really build something substantial? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, it's when they were throwing money for a while, but then they stopped throwing money at it. So when we went to look at getting more money, I had the choice: go give up a ton of equity and raise money, or just get it lean and mean and focus on what we were doing. And we made a big pivot along the way, which allowed me to do that. And we went in heavy into partnerships, and we became an AI operating system that powers other technology. And I think that's where we, by luck or whatever, we made that pivot, and it's been really good to us. So our customers, we have a platform that builders build on, and it specializes in logistics. So everybody's a builder now. Everybody wants to vibe code or get on Claude, and so everybody's a builder. So our platform allows you to go on the platform and you type in perfect English exactly what agent you want to build, whether it's email, text, or voice, and it builds it for you right before your eyes. It goes to work and builds it for you. It builds the flows, it builds the orchestration, and it does it itself. So anybody can take our platform if you're a little bit of tech savvy, and you could build your agents right on our platform.
So Dave, one of the conversations that I have often with people in the space is the idea that Claude, they can Claude their code, Claude their way to success. I asked the product person from Revanova whether or not someone could just vibe code a TMS. The conversation around CloneOps, Happy Robot, all these is that they're just wrappers around technology. What makes CloneOps special that isn't just, why can't somebody just go into Claude and do what you're doing?
CloneOps brings all of the tools together. So it's essentially the entire toolbox to build agents. So you can go out and build agents yourself and piecemeal it all together and get an LLM and piecemeal it together. Our platform has it all there. It has agent insights. It has already standardized agents there to deploy easier. Like, I think you can deploy and build an agent, a use case in 10 minutes in our platform and have it working. Mm-hmm. So, if anybody, I said a long time ago when I think the first time we were on stage, I said, yeah, if you can have any 12-year-old could go build a voice agent. But our platform now allows you to really build it and have all the tools you need there to build it. So we brought all the tools together in one platform, and I think that's what makes it special.
And is it all logistics?
It's industry agnostic, but we're focused on logistics. We brought all that logistics. I think we have 22 standardized agents in our marketplace that you can pull, deploy, hire in 1 minute, and then make a few tweaks and put it to work. So kind of like the lean model where we teed up employees and gave you employees, it's what we've done is taken that and saying, here's a workforce of agents you can hire and deploy.
So if I wanted to track and trace, I could plug that
immediately.
That is a functionally the same job, whether it's a Knight Swift or Sage Robinson or Jim Bob brokerage, right?
When I think the important thing now is we've gotten it down to the working minute. So we've been able to analyze to the working minute of what somebody's doing. So you layer AI in, you load SOPs, and you watch them for a week, and they come back and you're able to see exactly what they're doing. And you find that people are sending an email for track and trace, especially in near shore. Hi, your freight delivered this morning at 9 a.m. Thank you. And then they do that again. They type it. Hi, your freight delivered. Hi, your freight delivered. We see them typing at 50 times a day and scratching our head going, what are you doing? Like you're doing the same thing over and over again.
So one of the things that I know that some companies have implemented these voice agents for drivers. Early on, the response was amazing because drivers were not aware they were talking to an AI bot. Right. That has changed. Drivers do not want to talk to an agent. How is that? What are you seeing in terms of? Is anyone having success getting drivers off the phone, off of a human?
I'm hearing when I do quality check calls, I go, listen, I'm hearing drivers talking to the agents.
They know it's an agent, right?
And they do, but you know what's happened is an agent will call a driver and say, hey, I'm calling from so-and-so. Yeah, I'm here. This is where I'm at. I'm going to be on time. Thank you. And they can be rude to it and make it short and sweet and hang up, and they don't care.
Until there are overlords.
Right. It's like we verify invoices, and I hear calls where we're calling for a factory company verifying invoice, and they already know it's AI, and they immediately go, yes, this is it. This is the invoice number, paid to you, no advances, thank you. And we took a call that lasted a minute and a half or 2.5 minutes and got it down to like 40 seconds because they don't mind being rude to the AI.
And the same thing if it means they don't have to wait on hold, right?
Yeah.
When they're calling in.
Yeah.
Can you give us an example of like your favorite use case, the best use case you've seen someone, whether it be one that they came up with themselves, building their own agent in your tool, or one that you all deployed, and what some of the results of it were?
I mean, that's a good question. I mean, I like the accounts payable one because nobody wants to take an accounts payable call and like
a collections call.
Well, no, when somebody's calling in to say, did you pay me? Like, because everybody's managing their cash flow, and carriers call when they get paid in 30 days, they call in 28 and go, did you pay me? No, we pay you in 30 days. Like, look at it. So people are always calling. So the account payable mailboxes are full. The voicemails are full. They don't answer the phone because they know it's just another carrier asking a question. Did I get paid? Yes, you got paid.
Yeah.
Did you look in the mail today? And so
all they want is a yes.
Yeah.
Or no, or why they didn't.
Right. And so they send emails.
Expected tomorrow.
Yeah, and they drive them to send us an email, and then the emails don't get answered. So the accounts payable agent literally just answers and says, hi, we sent your check out last Tuesday. Thank you.
All right. So you've had 10,000 people in Colombia at one point.
Yeah.
As voice agents. I have to ask, where is the AI better than the voice?
So when you take a driver that speaks an Eastern European language or Hindu, and you take a person that speaks Spanish or Filipino, you listen to that conversation, and they go as simple as, oh, what's your email address? It's wrong 70% of the time between those two dialects.
Because just the dialect is so deep.
It's so deep, and you're like, did you say D or T? What did you say? And so you literally have to spell it out and do it. AI gets it immediately. Like AI literally gets the phone number, the email. You don't have to ask twice. And like that's where I see the big things happening with AI is it's accurate and it's efficient, and you don't have the human error in what you hear and what you put into the system.
Yeah, I've called into like hotels or airlines, and I can tell it's an AI. Like you can get kind of attuned to it. Service is better.
Yeah,
I'm glad you routed me to someone I can that I can have a conversation with. They're also they tend to be polite. Like you said, I can be rude and they're polite back.
Well, I've heard the AI like bring the conversation. Let me talk to an agent. Okay, sure. Just give me a little bit more information, and then they go along, and the call goes well, and then at the end they're like, okay, thank you. Have a good day. You too.
Solved, right?
Yeah,
I think that's the answer.
Yeah, it's. I just think that it's better. You're getting the information better. It's more accurate, and I think people have no problem talking to it.
All right, last question we have for you. Where is it overhyped? Where do you think that it's getting too much credit versus reality?
I think everybody, like all of the companies out there, and I did it too in the beginning. We hype something up that we don't really have, and like it doesn't really, it isn't like this is what it's going to do, and this is what we're doing, and
give me a use case in logistics for this one, please.
Like I don't know. That's use case in logistics. That's overhyped. I think the carrier sales was overhyped. honestly.
Just because they want to talk to a human, right? And that is the value.
Well, and also like now too in a tight market, like you have to sell that trucker to do your load.
Yeah.
Like you have to sell him,
It's
and
relationship
AI is
building.
not going to sell somebody to do. And you got to play tricks. Like, well, you promised me last week you give me a truck, and remember, like saying like AI doesn't know the tricks of. I mean, I've covered thousands and thousands of loads and hustled in brokerage. Like I had to you have to hustle trucks out of people to get capacity.
Megan was from Sage Robbins talking about how the quoting process, I think, was not as good as they hoped it was, and that seems like it's all negotiation.
Yeah, and you have to sell the guy, and then like it's also too, it's like there's still a human business, and especially Chicago. I love Chicago because I always say when we do an event up here, Chicago people just love to get out and drink and go out and have fun
in the summer.
Well, yeah, in the summer. I don't come up here in the winter. No way. and AI is not going to do that. We had a little happy hour event last night, and relationships and people like there's still a people business, and it's still done so fragmented. It's done so different. I think AI is good, and it's getting traction, and people are believing in it now, but it's not changing anything anytime immediately.
Well, David, I'm so excited for you and Clone Ops and what you're building and seeing your second act. So, David Bell, everybody.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Stay
it.
with us here on the panel.
Oh, okay.
But for those of you watching FreightWaves today, this will wrap up our
live broadcast.
For today. We'll be back at our normal place, normal time, normal show
tomorrow at noon. So thank you so much. Thank you.
All right.
Your live broadcast.
Logistics network that corrects its own mistakes before they cost you a single dime. What if your supply chain could think for itself? Imagine AI agents negotiating rates in milliseconds, predictive models that solve labor shortages before they even happen. This isn't science fiction, it's the agenda. On July 15th at the historic Old Post Office in Chicago, FreightWaves presents the Supply Chain AI Symposium. We are defining in real time how AI is embedded into every mile, every warehouse, and every handshake. Because in 2026, the future isn't just coming, it's already negotiating. The FreightWaves Supply Chain AI Symposium. Secure your spot now.